Hi, everyone. So what I want to do in this video is explain to you what you are required to do for essay number 1 on conspiracy theories. So let's go ahead and take a look at the instruction sheet. All right. It says, for this essay, you will write an essay on a conspiracy theory of your choosing. Step 1. You will begin by learning more about conspiracy theories in general. This information will come from the conspiracy theory lesson in week 5, including the video lesson in PowerPoint, which perhaps you have already watched, and the additional articles and videos for which I provided links. Now, you may not have looked at those yet, because in the announcement video, I had said, look at the PowerPoint first, then come here to essay 1 instructions. And then when you're ready, you can go back and look at those additional resources I provided in the conspiracy theories lesson. So either way, maybe you've already looked at them, maybe you haven't, but you will need to do that at some point. That information will be extremely helpful in your understanding of conspiracy theory and how to approach what you're actually going to write about. All right, so step 1, look at all the resources that I provided. Step 2, once you have a solid understanding of what conspiracy theories are all about in a general sense, you will then choose a specific conspiracy theory you want to work with on this essay. And then I have a list that you can choose from. So we've got I kind of have them listed sort of in order of how old they are, how long they've been around. So we start with the flat earther theory. That conspiracy theory goes back to like the 1950s, right? So there's a lot of information on it. The JFK assassination, the Martin Luther King Jr. assassination, the moon landing hoax, the satanic panic, which occurred during the 80s and somewhat into the early 90s. Our anti-vaxxers, specifically though, that vaccines cause autism. So that conspiracy theory by itself, just vaccines cause autism. Then we have our 9/11 truthers, that 9/11 was an inside job, chemtrails, the Sandy Hook shooting, birds aren't real. That one I'm not sure has gained as much attention and circulation as most of these others, but it is out there. Birds aren't real. Our QAnon conspiracy theory about the Democrats being, cannibalistic pedophiles. And then COVID-19. Now, there are several conspiracy theories associated with COVID-19. You will choose just one of them. So it could be, a theory about the origins of the virus, theories about the treatment of it, the vaccine, but only one theory that relates to COVID-19. You're only going to focus on one of them. Okay. Now, I suggest choosing a theory that is a bit older, so something from the first half of the list for sure. Maybe coming down into 9/11 and chemtrails, maybe even Sandy Hook. Maybe the first half to 2/3 of the list are the older conspiracy theories, the ones that have been around longer, just because you're going to find more information and possibly more objective information. All right, but I have included some of those recent theories as well in case you're really drawn to one of those, right? I do suggest reading through, making sure that you read through the rest of this and watch the rest of this video before you start deciding which one you want, because, the expectations of the assignment might also dictate somewhat which conspiracy theory you choose, okay? So if the list does not contain any conspiracy theories that interest you, or if you have one in mind that does not appear on the list, reach out to me so that we can discuss possible alternatives. I would prefer that you stick to the list, but at the same time, there's nothing inherently better about the ones on my list other than that they're quite popular, and I felt like you'd be able to find a lot of information on them. That's really why I chose those, right? So I'm not opposed to other possible conspiracy theories. but definitely reach out to me first so that we can discuss it and make sure that it will be a good fit for this particular essay. Okay. All right. So once you've chosen your conspiracy theory, you move on to step 3. The next step will be to research that theory. So you're going to want to gain an understanding of the theory's main claims. You're going to want a good understanding of the evidence used to support those claims and an understanding of the public's reactions to those claims and evidence. I encourage you to look for sources that promote your chosen conspiracy theory, people who are believers in that theory, as well as sources that refute the theory. Remember, good critical thinkers keep an open mind, right? I'm labeling these conspiracy theories, but you know, if you do your research, perhaps you find that there's solid support for the theory, so I'm not saying that all of these are totally false or anything like that. I just chose popular topics that get labeled as conspiracy theories. So I want you to research both sides, just like a good critical thinker should. Research what the believers say and why they say it, what support they use to back up the theory. And I want you to look at what the opposition says, the people who refute it and say that it is just a conspiracy theory and not based in reality. What do they say? What evidence and support do they use? Right? So keep an open mind, research both sides, all sides, right? As you conduct your research, you want to be thinking about each claim, each piece of evidence, and whether they stand up to the standards of strong arguments that we've discussed in weeks 1 through 5. Specifically, a lot of what we talked about last week with chapters 6 through 8. Okay. You'll also want to be thinking about the people who most vocally defend this theory and the people who most vocally refute this theory, and whether or not they display any signs of weak or strong critical thinking skills based on what we've learned in weeks 1 through 5, specifically chapters 1 through 5. Okay. I'm going to go into more detail about that here in a moment. Right. But just think about those things as you're doing your research. Step 4, once you feel like you've conducted enough research, you will then begin working on the essay itself. I'm going to go over an outline here in just a moment that shows you a really detailed example of how to organize the essay and what kind of information I'm hoping you include in the essay, right? Here, though, is just a general idea. It's going to be an APA format. So you're going to need the title page and everything in proper APA format. You're going to need an introductory paragraph, an overview of your theory, claims and evidence to support that theory, an analysis of the argument using chapters 6 through 8, an analysis of the conspiracy theorists or the believers using chapters 1 through 5, a discussion of your findings using the conspiracy theory lesson here in week 5 with the additional resources I've provided, and then a concluding paragraph. So you can see the essay is going to require all the basic elements of an essay: introductory paragraph with thesis statement, body paragraphs with unity, support, and coherence, and a concluding paragraph. The essay is also required to be in APA format, so you're going to need a proper header, proper title page, proper section headings, proper citations, a proper references page with proper reference entries. You'll also be expected to show adequate proofreading skills. And in the bonus materials tab in our course content, you will be able to see that, one second. I'm gonna pull up here where those items are. Okay. So if you go all the way down to the bottom, you can see bonus material right here, right? So we've got bonus material on grammar and mechanics, lots of lessons in there, on writing an essay, so introduction to writing, writing process, introductory paragraph, thesis statements, body paragraphs for point, support, and coherence, including paragraphs, and revision process. And then there's also a section on APA format and research papers. So everything that you're being expected to include in the essay that we don't cover in this class because it's not a composition course, I have given you, some review lessons that you can refer to if needed, because it is a formal essay and you're, expected to present a formal essay, right? And then once you're happy with your essay, you will submit it as a Word doc in the assignment slot for essay number 1. The goal is to have the essay submitted by the end of this week, week 5, but I'm fine if you need to take some additional time. Therefore, as long as you have it submitted by the end of week 6, I will not take off any late points, right? But keep in mind, we will be moving forward in week 6. We will be covering chapters 9 and 10, and you will have your normal batch of homework assignments. So a discussion, vocab slides, written responses, and a critical thinking issue, right? So the sooner you do submit essay number 1, the less likely you are to be overstressed and fall behind, but you can take the extra time allotted if you need it. And I will be grading the essay using the essay rubric that you can find under the Getting Started section. Okay, so general overview of what essay number 1 is all about. Let's take a look at that outline so that you can see exactly what you should be researching and including in your essay, right? So first things first, you need a title page and all other design elements of APA format. Once you start the essay itself, you're going to need an introductory paragraph that grabs the reader's attention, that introduces your chosen conspiracy theory and any needed background information, and then a thesis statement at the end of that intro. The first section of the essay, in terms of the body of the essay after the intro, first thing you're going to do is provide a brief overview of your conspiracy theory. Remember to cite sources when required. So you're going to provide a general overview of the theory, but you're not going to be discussing any of the specific claims and arguments just yet. You're just simply going to explain what this conspiracy theory is all about. In the next section, that is when you will look at the claims and evidence for the conspiracy theory. Again, remember to cite your sources when needed. So you're going to discuss the major claims and arguments associated with your conspiracy theory. You will also discuss the evidence used to support those claims. If your conspiracy theory is one that holds many claims, many aspects to the argument, you may want to focus on only the bigger, more important claims. At this point, you are not evaluating or responding to the claims in support. You're simply explaining them. You're not saying if you agree with them or disagree with them, if they're strong or weak. You're just telling us what they are, right? So as you work on this section of the essay, be sure that you're going through each claim one by one, that it's not all over the place, right? So go through them one at a time. So this section is going to be a big section. It's going to require numerous paragraphs. The next section will then be the analysis, right? Remember to cite your sources when needed. So this is where you will use the skills that we have learned about in weeks 1 through 5 to analyze this conspiracy theory, right? So you may not find examples of every single thing that I have mentioned here, but what you're going to want to look for is first, are there any informal fallacies in any of the claims and arguments that you've come across? Fallacies of ambiguity, fallacies of relevance, fallacies involving unwarranted assumptions. Are there any weaknesses in the claims or arguments? Look for clarity, credibility, relevance, completeness, soundness. Are there any inductive arguments used in the argument? Look for generalizations, analogies, and causal arguments. Are there any deductive arguments used in any of the resources you have found? Are the arguments valid? Are the arguments sound? You can see this section right here is really all about what we've learned, excuse me, mostly in chapters some of chapters 1 through 3, but a lot of 4 through 8. Okay. And then the next section is an analysis of the conspiracy theorists, the believers. So this is where you're going to be going back more towards like chapters 1 through 3, maybe chapter 4. But you're going to be looking also what we learned here in week 5. Did you notice any proxy conspiracism, tribal conspiracism, or constructive conspiracism? That comes from the lesson here in week 5. Did you come across anything that might suggest that these believers possess any kind of barriers to critical thinking? Chapter 1. Do they have any cognitive and perceptual errors in thinking? Are there any social errors and biases? Right? So again, this is what we've learned about up till now. The next section is then going to be a brief discussion, right? What is your final determination of this theory? Does it qualify as a conspiracy theory based on what we've learned this week? Or do you think this particular theory is a valid theory? What information are you already aware of that could refute this theory? Right? What additional information do you think is needed to either prove or disprove this theory? What questions are you left with? Right? So this section right here is kind of where you get to, state whether you think the conspiracy theory has a strong argument. Should we take it seriously? What would be needed to prove it? What would be needed to show that it is false? Are there any questions that we're left with? Then you want your concluding paragraph, signal the essay is coming to a close, remind your reader of the focus topic and main points, and leave us with a final thought or call to action. And then, of course, you're going to need a references page in APA format. So I really recommend you using this outline to help guide you as you do your research so that you know what kind of information you really need to be looking for. And then, of course, it'll help you as you write the essay. Now, again, you're not going to be able to check off every single one of these points in every section, especially when we get down here to the analysis part. You may not find any fallacies of ambiguity, but I bet you're going to find some fallacies of relevance. Bet that. You may not find any generalizations or analogies, but I bet you're going to find some causal arguments, right? So don't take this to mean that, you have to check off every single one of these points, right? Look for them and discuss the ones you do find, okay? All right. So that is essay number 1. I would get started on this as soon as possible, right? Again, try to have it in by the end of week 5, mostly just so that you aren't stressed during week 6, that you do have until the end of week 6 without any penalty. Definitely reach out if you run into problems or need help with anything. Otherwise, I hope you learn some interesting things and are able to put to use the knowledge and skills that we have been learning about in weeks 1 through 5. And I can't wait to read them.